You're listening to Parasearch Radio, news, views and reviews from the world of the paranormal from across the UK and beyond. Find us on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web. The views and opinions expressed by presenters and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Parasearch Radio or their affiliates and sponsors. Listener discretion is advised.
Prism show. This is my first show this evening, and so just know me already, and you all know that I was part of the Supernatural show with Gemma, and sadly we finished that show, but now I'm back with a vengeance, and we've got such an exciting few shows coming up for you, which is brilliant from my perspective, being a medium myself, but also being interested in all of the spirituality. And when Kerry and Paul invited me to take on a new show, this was the concept that we actually wanted to go down. So I have a very, very special guest with me today, and I'm really excited. This lady is such a lovely lady. I've seen her quite a few times, seen her on TV. She doesn't really need any introductions whatsoever, but I'd like to welcome Sally Morgan here with me this evening. So thank you for joining me.
Oh, hello, Jo, and hello to listeners. You're very welcome. And that was quite extensive introduction.
Well, I think with it being the first show, I think we just need, having you on is such an honour anyway. Because,
don't be silly. You're very, very welcome. It sounds an exciting show. You're going to have some really good people on, I think. Call me Sally.
Yeah, we've got some really good guests lined up, but obviously you're the first. So,
very kind.
So yeah, straight into the lion's den, I think. So, but the listeners are going to be listening in to us this evening, but they've also got their questions and everything in the chat room. So if you want to ask any questions whatsoever, just stick them in the chat room below, and we'll ask them if we get a chance. But Sally, First of all, what I wanted to ask you was, how on earth did you realise that you were a spiritual medium?
I think that, I think it's quite well documented that I've had this ability, because we're all born with this ability, but I've sort of started to work with this ability from a very, very young age, actually at school. But like most things, for example, with me, I've always worn spectacles since I was 3, but I never realised I was wearing spectacles until I went to school, and it was pointed out to me when you're teased, 4 eyes and all of that. And exactly the same with my ability. It was really when I was about 11, because it was at my secondary school, and I think I said something to a young boy in the playground, and the next day, him and his friends were teasing me about being different and weird. So it was really, to be very honest, it was then that it sort of like a light went on in my head, like a moment, and it was like, oh my goodness me, I better say anything anymore. Up until then, it was something that, it wasn't a party piece then. It became a bit of a party piece in my teenage years, but up until being about 11 years old, it was something that it seemed random. Of course, it wasn't. It was just me, I would imagine, being in the right sort of zone, you could say.
Yeah.
When I saw things in the house, I lived in a very haunted by my grandfather. I was born in a very large 4-storey house that the top halves of it were always empty. We lived in the basement and on the first floor, and my grandfather for many years never bothered to rent out the rest of the house. So it was our playground, and it became a character. Number 13, Waldemar Avenue, Fulham, became a character in my life, really.
Wow. They say sometimes your unlucky number is 13, but it sounds like it wasn't very unlucky for you.
No, and it's really interesting because the number 13, we talk about our lucky numbers.
Yeah.
13 is always a number that seems to reoccur in my life. So, yeah, my first grandson was born on the 13th. So,
Wow.
it's a number that I certainly don't look at it as being bad luck.
Unlucky, yeah. That's good. So when you got to your high school, you mentioned that you used to use it as a party piece. What sort of things did you used to do when you did that?
Well, I think one of them, I think this might be in one of the books as well. One of them was, I went to school in the main school, and we had what was referred to as an annex, which was another school, which was about a 2-mile walk away. And in between that, lots of the people that went to the school lived there, and my girlfriend and a friend of mine, she lived sort of halfway, so we used to pop into her house and get, I don't know, a glass of pop or something. And this particular day we were sitting on the floor in front of a fireplace, and on the fireplace were little tiny china animals, the dogs that her mum had put there, and my friend must have said to me, "Oh, can you do your funny thing that you do?" So she was facing me with her back to the fireplace where all these little dogs were, and I was looking at her, and I just said, and I don't know what made me say it, I said, "Well, if you turn around, that dog is going to move." And so she went, "Oh," like giggled. As she turned around, the dog moved.
Oh my goodness.
Well,
so what did she do?
Well, I screamed my head off. We jumped out of her flat. She lived in a block of flats. We ran out of the flat, and it was like, and she said, "Oh, please don't tell my mum." I said, "Well, I never saw her." And I went, "Oh my God, no!" And I convinced myself that it didn't move. But of course, years later, and I know the girl's name, and I know she married, so perhaps I can say her name. Her name's Valerie Ives. And years later, she said to me, and she was Valerie Thomas then. She said, "Oh my God, Sally, that little ornament, it moved," and it did.
It's amazing when things like that happen, though, isn't it? And do you think then, because I know you've been quite involved in the paranormal quite recently, and there's a lot of live streams on your Facebook, sat in your house and having, your random, I've seen certain things in your home, and it's kind of like thinking, wow, when did your paranormal interest peak?
Oh, I think that it's always been there, because, as I say, I was brought up in a house that even when paranormal wasn't a word, and certainly you didn't have paranormal investigators. I mean, I'm 59, so we're going back a long, long way here. I was brought up in that house from a little girl of 2 years old. And so it's always been there, the knowing, you could say, that spirit or spirit energy can manifest itself. Okay. So I've always known that because I witnessed it. I grew up with it. And I think that it sort of came to light really from someone got in touch with me who's a paranormal investigator, and such a nice man. And basically he suggested, or would I go? And I, well, why not? I'm really I'm able to reach a lot of people, so I quite understand how certain people would like my opinion, and that's a really, really nice, be. And I suppose my age as well, because I have to tell you, Jo, and you're a medium as well. We're like very fine red wine. We get better as we get older, darling.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
It's a profession that there's absolutely no doubt. It's a profession that as we become older and wiser, our ability matures, and it becomes we are more aware of what is going on.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And your investigations, you've been out obviously with a very, very good friend of mine, Barry. You've been out with him a few
Barry
times.
guy, yeah, lovely guy, lovely man.
Absolutely adorable is Barry. I've worked with Barry a few times, and he is so into the paranormal, and him and his family, and Lucy's kind of coming up as well now, which is fantastic.
Well, that's nice, because they can be together, which is very important. Yeah.
I always think it's interesting for couples when they come together as a paranormal investigator and a medium, and you hear of it quite often now within the kind of circles that we all mix in, people finding each other spiritually. But you've been married an awful long time. What did your husband think about your abilities when you told him?
Oh, well, we've been together 46 years, so we've been married for 45. So we have been together a long time, and he's always just accepted it. It's like, he's always had his career and his shop and bits and pieces. But for me, it's never been something. I'm really lucky, I suppose. I've never been put down by him by doing something that is weird. We have found throughout the years that my husband's friends, the male friends, think that it's very odd because you know, it's like people get very mixed up with a medium, a clairvoyant, a psychic, and reading the mind. I can't read anyone's mind. I'm not a mind reader. But there are people out there that think that because you sort of know things that perhaps you shouldn't know, or why do you know them, that you're reading people. I don't read anyone's mind. You know, it's just there.
Yeah, and it obviously, because when you get asked, and I mean, I get this asked all the time, and you probably do as well, can you read me? And it's like, you know, I'm not performing monkey sometimes, and, you know, I can read.
Well, I'll give you an example. Literally this summer, we were invited to a really lovely afternoon tea dinner. So it was like a lunch. It was someone's birthday, and it was right on the coast. And I was at a table, and I think that I know the daughter, and the daughter's become very close to myself and to John. So the mother and father, they wanted to invite us, which was lovely. But to be very honest, no one there, no one was into mediums or anything. But they knew what I did because of my profile. So what I'm getting at, they sat me on a table with people that perhaps were it would maybe a little bit more flexible. And then there was a man that he stood up, and he actually turned out to be someone important to do with the royal family, and he came and sat next to me. And obviously I wasn't the butt of jokes, but I knew that it was like, oh my God, there's that woman over there, necessarily in a positive way, but that I'm used to that, you know, we have to get used to that. Anyway, he sat down, and it was like, oh, you know, what do you do? And I said, oh, I'm sure you know, but, you know, I'm a medium, la, la, la. And he went, oh, I don't know. I don't know if I believe in all that. I said, well, that's fine. You know, we have to have, you know, our opinions. And we're really lucky that we live in a country where we have free speech. Fine. So he said, well, you know, what can you pick up for me? So I said, well, I'm here at a party. Wait till I'm going to tell you something now. You're just going to... So he said, and I was picking up masses from him as he walked over, actually. And he said, oh, no. So I said, no, I'm at a party. So he went, oh, come on. I thought you could just... So I just said to him, who's Richard? So he went, what did you just say? And I said, who's Richard? He's 4 years old. It was his brother that died at 4 years old. So this man nearly collapsed at the table, but it didn't end there because he said, and I said, well, don't panic. Your mother's here. And I got his mother's name. I can't remember the mother's name. I think it might have been Anne. But anyway, I said his mother's name. And what he said, I'm really sorry I have to, and he said to everyone, I'm really sorry I have to leave the table. And as he stood up, I got hold of his hand and I said, just a little tip, be careful what you wish for. I said, you walked over to berate me and to make me look silly, and this is what I do.
Yeah, and it is like that because you do get people who do that and do try to, you know, belittle you in front of others. And I've had it myself, you know, I've had it where people have said, oh, you know, what are you going to tell me today, septic peg? And
I know.
All the derogatory terms.
You just learn to say, I just learned to say the old ones are the best, you know. Oh, I've never heard that before, you know. Did you know you were coming? It's like, please. So it goes with the territory. It goes with the territory. And I have to say, I really, really don't think I'm thick-skinned. I actually think I'm a very sensitive person. But I think that what you acquire is like a buffer zone. Yeah. Do you not think that?
You've got your own little force field, haven't you? And you've heard it so many times. It's like, you know what? That's just old hat to me. And it's when people say things that are very, very personal that they tend to sort of like protrude through that force field, isn't it? Really, that's when those little comments.
Well, I do because we have, you know, like I'm sure you do as well. You know, our work really involves social media, it involves websites, it involves anything to do with computers. That's people's work nowadays. So we are, you know, at the mercy of some very nasty trolls.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think that, you know, you've only got to look at innocent people, you could say, that are on, like, I don't know, Love Island or anything like that. They're young girls and boys, and yet they're trolled mercilessly. And that's been my experience with my work for many, many years. But there are sometimes people cross a line that I'm not even aware of that I'm being there. But I think it might be when they try and include my family or something, and then it's like, whoa, just a minute, I have to make sure that you go away. But not on an everyday basis. Someone says, "Oh, it's a load of rubbish." I go, "Well, that's your opinion. Yeah, that's your opinion." And I think that what anyone thinks of me, that's not my business. What you think of me isn't my business. That's your business. And I try and live by that, because that really does, like I say, create a lovely, far away buffer zone.
Yeah, I think when you was in Celebrity Big Brother as well, it kind of gave people that little bit more of an insight into your actual personality, though, which you actually shone through Ryan Thomas in there, and it was so lovely to watch. It was really lovely to watch, because you were the matriarch of that house, and to actually watch the events unfold, and you kind of be that mother figure more than anything. I think that kind of steered people into thinking they knew you a lot more.
Well, that's really nice. I think the whole Big Brother, what they want from it, whatever the producers, the channel, whatever want from Big Brother, it's a mind game, isn't it? Yeah. And I went in there never watching one episode ever. My daughter's sitting behind me here laughing. If your listeners hear someone giggling, that's my daughter. And she did say to me, "Mummy, I do think even if you just watch the highlights," and it's a bit like, no, I think I'd rather go in completely unaware of what's going to happen to me. But I survived 26 days, Jo. Do you know what I mean? I can't even believe that.
That's amazing, though, from somebody never watching it before, and obviously, there were so many comments on Twitter and on Facebook as well. So it is really nice that you have the 26 days in there. But in yourself, when you're cooped up in an environment with all those different personalities, how easy was it to kind of switch off your gift, so to speak?
Very, very, very easy, because I'm never aware of switching it on or off. I refer to it as a volume, as a noise. So I'm talking to you now, and I'm not. That isn't switched on. So it's. I suppose if I thought very hard, or I just sat here and thought about it, it's like a slight noise. And then when I'm working, it's like someone's turned the volume up. Yeah. When I was in the house, it was still there because I was there, because it's part of me. But it was just, the volume was just down, So I wasn't aware of doing anything with it at all. I was Sally, I do think that a lot of people, and they think it, I'm sure, about many mediums that have a profile. You're a bit of an enigma, because what goes before me is what I do, rather than Sally the person. Yeah. And I totally understand that. Very few people know me and know me really. And the people that do, I'm really lucky. They keep me grounded, and they let me know that they love me, for what I am.
Yeah. Because Sally Morgan is a brand at the end of the day, isn't it? You are just Sally, and it is nice that when people actually see you on TV, and they see you, doing the Big Brother, they see you on tour and things like that, and people actually are in awe of you. They don't actually realise that sometimes you're just me. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. Well, on a daily basis, I'm just me, and then when I have to. Go in front of an audience, in front of the people that, have bought a ticket, that, want that little bit of hope that there is something there. Literally, the moment I put that foot on the green, which is the stage, the moment my foot goes green, I'm Sally Morgan, the medium. And then I walk off, and I'm just Sally. So it's just something. It's not a skill. It's just, I think I'm meant to do it, because it's where I belong with my work.
That's what I was going to say, because I've seen you. I went to the Winding Wheel in Chesterfield actually, and I will never forget it to this day, because obviously I was speaking to Fern, and it was amazing, such a great night. With all the pictures in, and I was actually sat there with my best friend Rebecca, and we were sat next to 3 lovely ladies, and I sat right at the back just on purpose because I sat there and thought I'll just get a feel for everybody.
Yeah.
And literally, as soon as you picked out this, I looked at Rebecca and I said, his name's Martin. And you said his name's Martin. I was like, oh my goodness. And then you kept saying, and I'll never forget this, he kept coming in and coming out and coming in and coming. And literally, I just turned around to my friend Rebecca and I said, he passed away with stomach cancer. And I said, he was quite poorly. And I said, but he's shown me some keys. And I said, there's all these keys. I've got goosebumps talking about it. And I said, he's shown me these keys, but they're lost. And then you said, and my friend was looking at me and she was like, oh my God, are you picking up on the same things that Sally's picking up? I said, well, I must be. And then I just turned around and looked at this girl, and I said, these 3 girls. Yeah. And she stood up and she was like, that's for us. And I was like, oh my goodness. So literally, you was talking to them and I was telling Rebecca, and these ladies were like, oh my God, you two are both working in tandem. And it was amazing. It was one of the best nights I've had in a long time. So it was lovely.
I'm so pleased. I do get, because it always does amaze me. I do get a lot of mediums that come along.
Yeah, I think it's exciting though, because all mediums work in so many different ways, don't they? You've got people who work with psychometry and can pick up spirit from that area. You've got people who work as as clairvoyants who see the future and things. But to be able to sit there and watch another medium work, I find it quite interesting because you actually sit there and you do pick up things from other mediums. And I work with other mediums quite regularly within the paranormal field. And I've picked up some fantastic tips from others, how to pick up different and how to channel, basically, because I've never channeled before, and the first time it happened, it was just something that was, I couldn't have even seen it coming, if I was honest. And the worst thing was, I asked for it before actually to the venue. I was like, oh, I'll be able to do this tonight with Gary, I'll be fine, and then when it did happen, it's like, what on earth has gone on? Because it's been recreated now and it's always going to be there. And what was lovely about it is another medium had the same exact episode that I had in exactly the same spot, which when you put 2 people who've never been investigating together before and had it a year separately, that's when you realise that, wow, something major's just happened.
And also you realise, there are things that we can't see that are incredible. The energy is an incredible force. And there's no doubt that as a medium, you're harnessing an energy. I mean, I'm not an academic and, I'm doing this all my life, but I still don't have the answers. But there's definitely, it's an energy that we're able to, hone, to get into. And basically, I work by just saying, you could say the words, the sentences, the knowings that come into my head. Mm-hmm. And I just say it. I think that the less it's untainted by me and my thoughts, the more pure. And purity is accuracy. Accuracy is validation. Validation is proof. Do you know what I mean?
It's really funny because I always liken it now to, I call myself the psychic catchphrase lady, because I just say what I see now, and that's how it used, and that's how it happened. And the producer Kerry, who's producing the show for us this evening, we were talking last night, and she was like, I've been hearing this noise, and I just said, who's the guy with the motorbike with the letter S? And she just went, what? So it's things like that just happen on a whim, and she was like, oh, I can take that. And I said, well, that's who it is. So I said, all he's doing is just letting you know that he's there, and giving you that little bit of a pick me up sort of thing. So it is lovely when you can do that for friends.
I know.
But you do it for people all around the world, and it's fantastic because you've just come back from a psychic cruise, haven't you? I have.
I've done a couple of psychic cruises this year, and I've just literally come back from Australia So I've got a nice following in Australia, and it's very nice of them to, offer me to go and do tours there. So the tours there are very important, and I think I'm about to do Canada. They've been showing lots of my old TV programs there. So at the moment, so it's just nice to say hello, and it's just, for me, it's really lovely to I really get a lot from meeting the individuals that will sit there and will tolerate 2 hours of me talking. I mean, that's a bit like, thank you so much. So I get a real buzz from that,
Yeah. And it's exciting though for you, isn't it, to get to be able to see the world and do what you're doing.
Yeah, it's really exciting, and it's also it's unreal. There isn't a day goes by when I don't, think of where I came from, where I come from, and I'm very, very proud of it. But it's a bit like, oh my goodness me, who'd have thought that I would be seeing tens of thousands of people a year and hundreds of thousands in the last 11 years. It's incredible to think that you could have that many people with an ability that so many people poo-hoo, and yet there are these people out there that find it gives them a lot of hope, and that's what it's about, really, isn't it, Jo?
It's comfort as well, isn't it, for the people who come along, because they've obviously come for a reason. And we've all got loved ones that we've lost, and some well before their time, and it's so comforting to know that there are people like us in the world that are able to pass those lovely messages on to people.
Absolutely. And as you said, just going back to what you mentioned a little while ago about the paranormal now it's more acceptable, and it's and it grabs a lot of people,
it's fashionable
it's very fashionable,
it is fashionable at the moment, and with all the TV shows that we've got ongoing at the moment, and shows that we've got in development, and there's always people out there who are wanting to kind of push the boundaries with the paranormal. And I think introducing mediums and different people who can read different objects, and getting these people necessarily put together. Because there are an awful lot of us, and I get it quite a lot, where you don't look like a medium. Well, what's a medium supposed to look like? You don't look like a paranormal investigator.
Yeah.
So what are we supposed to look like?
Well, I think that it's certainly not going to go off the boil. Like, if anything, I think it will become more popular, and with the equipment and all the bits and pieces that go with modern paranormal investigation nowadays, really there's no limit to it, is there? But I've always said, even before we had mobile phones and everyone had a camera, I always said that the technology would be, at the end of the day, what shows us that there is an energy that can be captured on film. There's no doubt about it.
There is. I mean, it's what always interests me is when I'm just going to go back to something experience. There was 3 girls around a table, myself being one, another girl and another girl, and right at the second I watched this girl's hair be moved up, and as just before that happened, I just looked and I went, he's back. And the other girl who was sat across the table, she actually looked in exactly the same place, and she saw him. So I felt him. My friend had his hands in her hair, and this other girl saw him. Yeah. And for the 3 of us, we actually captured an EVP with him saying, "Feel me," which was unbelievable. So there were just 3 girls in the room, and I think that's what's going to happen. Is the paranormal is going to become a lot more diversified, with a lot more females, I think, now, because it's been quite male dominated for quite a long time. The likes of Ghost Adventures, Paranormal Down, and things like that. And I think the girls now, it's I want to just say girls want to have fun, but it's not that kind of to go down. But I think the girls are going to start to take over before long.
I do think that, you see, when you look at women, you look at females, and you look at the hormones that are raging around us, they are definitely, electrically, you could say, with the energy. Hormones can be picked up. It's almost like it's almost like a smell that is there that comes off. It's almost as if you could see it. Like when you look at a desert and you're looking and you see that shimmer. Well, that's what you get when you get a lot of women. I mean, it's a known fact. It's scientifically known that in convents, the nuns that are still menstruating will all menstruate on the same day, will all finish on the same. And it's to do with all, you could say, their energy. And it's the same with paranormal investigations. You should have, I would say to anybody wanting to set up a paranormal society or investigations or whatever they call them, you must have women on the team, because it's going to be the women that will tell you exactly what room or where to look or where to sit. It will be the woman on that investigative team that will tell you that.
Yeah. It's also kind of like the kind of baby scenario, though, isn't it? You, as a mother, when your baby is crying, and you automatically know when that baby's feeding, when that baby wants nurturing. And men don't necessarily have that, do they? They don't have that maternal instinct or that natural instinct to be able to understand.
And men can be at times, I mean, I don't want to pigeonhole anyone here, but men can be they can be clumsy, ham-fisted in a situation. This is what I feel if I ever do any paranormal investigation, which is very little nowadays. I like to work quite quietly. I don't like a lot of script, and I don't like a lot of people talking. I prefer it a lot quieter when I do paranormal investigation, and I think that women can handle that a lot better than men, unless a man is very aware of of his emotions and is willing, you could say, to expose them. Then I think you've got a good man on the team as well.
Barry was good.
Barry was very good. I think what with Barry, Barry went in at most of the time. He goes in as a skeptic, rather than I don't like the term believer, but no. It's nice and easy for your listeners to understand. He goes in as a skeptic, not necessarily as a believer, and that's not a bad place to start when you're doing a paranormal investigation. Yeah.
But what I find most interesting about Barry, though, is he lives with 8 females within his house. So he's got daughters. He's got a very in tune wife as well. So I think Barry's on the cusp. He understands the intuition and things like that. So, and I think that probably may be the female influence in his house. So
that's a good thing to look at. I hadn't thought of that, but you're spot on there. So I think that so us girls, we can do a lot more than men think.
Yeah, I think that as well. And we're constantly saying that, though, on investigations, and I've kind of taken a step back from the public side of things now and just going on the the private investigations with other teams, and it's so much more refreshing, because I love public events. I absolutely love them, and you get people who don't know you and they watch you work, but when you've got paranormal investigators who do know work, and you're teamed up with other mediums who exactly how they're going to react to certain situations, and they've got your back, so to speak. I just think it's amazing. I think the events that I've been to recently have been fantastic.
And there's no doubt in my mind. I mean, we've gone really into possibility of doing our own, which we're not going to do. But my daughter, the whole point of a paranormal investigation, as far as I'm concerned, is evidence.
Yeah, definitely.
So therefore, you need, they need to be really sort of like, with sort of military sort of precision. You need to have, so that you've got your EVPs, so that you've got the on camera more than anything. I mean, there's me. You're talking about my house, which is very, very haunted. I live in an old vicarage. And I know you mentioned when that image came up behind my back.
Yeah.
And I was, I didn't see it only after come out from behind, because the sofa's, even though I was talking, I was looking at my iPad, and Luke was sitting next to me typing, the messages that I was giving. And like, because I was on my platform, and literally it was only as the man's face, he looked at me like that, so he came round and looked that I could see. But when we looked at it and we slowed it down, I mean, and that was because it happened. I was talking to somebody online, and her name was Sally, my name, and I said, "Oh, hello, you're another Sally." Bang! It came out.
That's madness.
So it was like, I know that because I said another Sally, that's why it appeared.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Do you try and recreate anything in your house? Because I know there was a lot of to debunk things, and there was a lot of messages saying, "Oh, it's the car light on the outside of the window." But I sat there and I was looking at it, and I'm thinking, well, if it's car lights coming from the window,
there's no road.
There's no road.
There's no road outside window, and I had my blinds down, so nothing could come in.
They're like thick felt blinds.
They're really lovely fabric. They're like a tweed, like a house blind, and they were down simply because I had the light at the back of me shining on, and I looked like I had a halo, so I still light. But out of that window, I was in the dining room. All I've got is hedges. There's no road. There's the church. The road is over here on the where the kitchen is, really, where I used to do the vicar's chair. That's the road, but there's no road here.
Yeah, that's one thing. And I sit there, how do you know if there's a road there? And people surmise quite a lot of things, don't they? Trying to pull people's evidence apart. Trolls come in again, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, that night when that happened, I was very prepared, even now, very prepared for somebody to say to me, "Oh, that's what that was." Yeah. That'd be fine by me, seriously. But it went off to a paranormal investigator who went through it all, knew exactly the iPad. We didn't tell him I was looking at an iPad. For all he knew, I was looking at a phone or a computer. He knew exactly the device it was called. He knew everything. There's no way it was set up.
Yeah. And you could tell it wasn't set up anyway, because you actually watched it manifest slowly. And I remember it to a T because I watched it. So when you watched it actually manifest, it was just like, it was just there, and then it disappeared.
Played it back. I've got it all in slow motion. And it comes up from behind the sofa and comes around and then turns, and literally, I think his face, this is going to sound really sort of scary, but was almost like a skeleton's face.
Yeah. What I pictured him to kind of look like was more, do you remember Edward Heath, the old, was he an old prime minister or an old politician?
Yeah.
Quite a big nose. He had like hardly any hair. He had these big high cheekbones like a skeleton would. So when I look back at that, I was like, oh my God, who is that? And he did look like a portly man. Yeah, well, when I first looked at it, as it comes up from the sofa, this is going to sound crazy, I think it looks like a dog. I know that sounds really like an animal. And then as it comes around here, it's like the man, because it was the man's face. And I went, it's your man's face. Oh my God. It was like, bang. And it went around in front of me, around my iPad, and it went straight through my ceiling. And the ceiling over the dining room is my bedroom. But usually what spirit do, though, when they do manifest, they manifest into something that you actually are aware of. Because, well, I don't know whether it happened to you, but when I first heard somebody talking to me, it was my ex-husband's voice, and he's shouting at the top of his voice, and it's quite angry, as if to say, I want your attention. And I got so angry. I stood at the top of the stairs and I shouted at my ex-husband and said, what are you talking? Why are you shouting at me? Literally walked into the room, and he was halfway through mowing the lawn. And I was like, who's just shouted me? And that was it then. As soon as I realised that that's what they were doing, they started to come through with their own voices then, which was quite uncanny. Yeah. I've only ever, if I've had, an EVP moment, which I had a huge one when I was 14 with my mother as the witness. It's always been, that voice was quite monotone. Although I knew it was a man,
thing. And I said to my mother, that's the man's voice. But you couldn't really, because it spoke like that, you couldn't really distinguish it from male or female, although I know it was male.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really like, well, it was unreal. I say it was spooky because we weren't expecting it. It was like, well, I went into my bedroom. My mother and I had been out and we came in as I was 14. I said, well, I had the latest Cliff Richard record. I'm going to play the Cliff Richard and Helen Shapiro. I mean, we're going back to the early 60s, late 50s. And I had a little tiny record player that you just plugged in, like a turntable. Mm-hmm. As I went over to plug it in, it wasn't plugged in. This voice filled the whole room. Although it seemed to come out of the record player, but filled the whole room. And my mother was standing at the door, smiling, waiting for me to put the record on. And it just said, "Stop the bloody racket." Well, it's an old term for noise.
Yeah.
You know, where I lived anyway, I lived in Fulham, and it was like slang. And we both looked at one another, and I said, my mother went, "What was that?" So, what happened there? And I said, "Is that Dad?" She went all over the house. I said the top two halves of the house were empty, but she went up there. No one in the house. But it filled the whole room. It was like there were speakers. You didn't know what speakers were in those days. But now it was like, oh, my God.
Yeah. It's madness, isn't it? Especially when you get that voice.
I have in the house I live in, most every other day, someone will talk to me, will say my name, and there'll be no one there.
Yeah. Was your mother quite supportive of your gift growing up?
Well, she was, because my parents, my mother was only 16 when I was born, and my father 18. So they were, and we were really poor, like everyone, everyone was. I lived in a road where we all had the same, which was nothing. And Fulham in those days, where I grew up, where I was born and grew up, was a very poor area. It's not like it is now. And basically all my mum wanted to do, she worked, used to leave the house at 8 and get home at 7, was putting food on the table and making sure you had shoes on your feet. And the father was the same. So what I'm trying to get at, she was young. So when I saw Miss Spooner on the stairs that time, when I saw this lady upside down on the stairs, and I got sight of two little black boots, like little sort of Victorian boots. Mm-hmm. And we were playing schools, and I was the teacher, and I ran down the hall. We had this big hallway, and all the kids always used to come into our house. And as I ran down the hall, I caught sight of her feet, these tiny little feet. So I put my hand through the bars of the stairs, and my hand went through her body. It was like, and I pulled my hand out, and I was only little. I maybe only been 4 foot. And my friends in the who were in the hall where I was, but we were playing schools. I went, they're their feet, and they went, "What are you looking at?" They couldn't see her, and then I looked around at them, and there was her head like that at the bottom of the stairs. So, and then all of a sudden, it wasn't there. And it might have been. I don't think it was the same day. It might have been weeks later. But I was in the hallway again, and my mother was there, and I went, "That's where I saw that lady." So my mother said, "What lady?" And I said, "There was a lady upside down, and she had black boots on." I'll never forget it. So my mother went, "Show me." So I pointed to where and she said, "Where was her head?" And I went, her head was, so she was upside down. This is the bottom of the stairs, and her head was there. And my mother screamed, and she went, "Miss," and I looked at her, she went, and my mother was 9 months pregnant with me, just about to have me. She lived in the house with her mum and dad. My grandfather owned the house. And this old lady, lived right at the top of the house, and someone rang her bell, and she came down the stairs, and my mother was in a room just off the hallway, and she tripped on her dress, fell down the stairs, broke her neck, landed with her head at the bottom of the stairs and her feet in the air. And my mother heard the thud, 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 opened her door, and she was dead in front of my mother.
Oh, my goodness.
My mother opened the door, and it was her son. who was coming to visit her. So my mother, she was like rich, like she's 16 years old. She was a little girl with me in her tummy. So they carted my mum off downstairs into the basement where I lived, and he dealt with the ambulance service. But she'd never ever told us that story, and I described. Well, there she was, Miss Spooner.
That is amazing, isn't it? When you get that validation that somebody's actually seen something and you come up with something. It's just, I find it so amazing, even to this day.
Exactly. Even to this day, I can see her little black boots, her little black ankle boots laced up, and I can see her face. She had grey hair in a bun, and the body must have, but that's all I remember seeing. I don't really remember seeing her dress. I just remember her feet and her head. How weird is that?
Yeah, I think when you're like we are, I think you tend to find that when you're a little bit younger, because they just show you everything, don't they? And they kind of give you everything because you're like a little sponge when you're a child anyway. And,
Well, it was just fascinating.
Thankfully, my daughter...
her energy was obviously there that day, watching me be the teacher, as normal, bossing everybody around. I was the teacher, and all the little kids from the street, we were all latchkey kids. We all were out playing while our mum and dads were at work. That's what you did. You played in the street. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And she was watching me. I look at that now as an adult, and that's quite comforting, because I think her energy was watching me and my sister in the hallway.
Yeah. Was Miss Spooner, was she a teacher or anything like that?
No, I don't. My mother doesn't know. All she knows is she was, to my mother, a 16-year-old, she was always an old lady, lived up in the top flat.
Yeah.
So she was...
It would be interesting, wouldn't it, to kind of... would be interesting to try and find that out, whether she was, and if she kind of... The energy came through because you were being the school mistress and being the boss, and it would maybe... You never know, do you?
Well, and I think
that's the paranormal investigator coming out in me there.
Yeah, but why not? When my mother... when she first said, "Oh, Miss Spooner," years later I said, and my mother said it was her son at the door. I said, "But I thought you said Miss Spooner." She said, "Well, obviously she was Mrs. Spooner," and that's a very unusual name, isn't it, Spooner?
Yeah.
So it's a bit like my mother said, we always knew her. We referred to her as Miss Spooner, but she was Mrs. obviously because her son was there. But nice to investigate her, and so, wouldn't it?
It would. This leads me on to obviously my next question. When people have loved ones that are missing, and like people who've been adopted or anything like that, it's just people like us help other people out. I mean, it's when you kind of get the police cases and things like that, and you see the likes of in America where they've had mediums who've been on cases. There's quite a famous lady actually, and I can't, her name escapes me, but she goes in and she picks up information from sites, and they actually document everything, and she's quite spot on quite a lot of those cases.
No, I've done quite a lot of work for the police. And I did a big case in Australia for the police in Perth.
It's good, isn't it? And obviously, I don't want to kind of divulge down that route because it's quite personal to families and things like that, isn't it?
But, you have to realise, and you realise, but mediums are the last port of call, which they have to be, because everything has to be scientific and so that it can be proven, and you've got forensics and everything. Of course, that's what you have to have. But if you have any medium that is involved with a case that the police are holding, or it's normally cold cases where I've been called in anyway, and I find that quite interesting. And I'll get lots of detectives, because it's usually detectives that are dealing with me, not the bobbies on the street, and they become fascinated by it. They're not as skeptical as one might think.
Yeah, they've got to kind of think outside the box, though, haven't they? It's like a huge jigsaw puzzle, isn't it? And if you've got somebody who comes in who has pieces of this missing jigsaw puzzle, like we can do, it's then when they actually sit back and say, well, she couldn't possibly have known that. She wasn't in the vicinity. She wasn't country. How on earth does she know that? And that's what fascinates me, is when police actually do say, well, that wasn't released to the public. How do you know that? And it's kind of like, you've asked us to come in. You've asked us to be able to have a look at what's happening in the case. We've given you this. And it was quite funny, actually, because my ex-father-in-law used to be in CID and a detective, and they dealt with quite a well-documented murder. And it was unsolved for quite a while. And I think he did speak to a medium, and she actually told him that he had a fetish with shoes. So that, to me, was just unbelievable, because when it actually came out, and he had a number of different women's shoes in his house. So I just find it all really fascinating.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I totally agree. And the cases that I've worked on, they've always been very, very and quite stunned by the information that, I've been able to give them. So anything that you can, we want to help, don't we?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's where when you were saying earlier that you're quite an emotional person as well, and a very sensitive person, I think that kind of comes through as mediums anyway. You do have to have that compassionate side to you, don't you? And that being empathic.
Well, you do. Empathy is a huge part of it's like a recipe, isn't it? It's one of the ingredients that you're not going to be a good medium unless you've got empathy. And I also think that's why I think mediums get better with age, is life's university of life will show us so many incidences that we can, when we are picking up information through our head, we can recognise and we can put a label to it. And that's what it's all about. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are some brilliant mediums that are in their 20s. I'm not saying there aren't.
Yeah, absolutely.
If they're, what are they going to be like in their 50s and 60s? Unreal. Because definitely one gets better with it. I feel that my ability is stronger than it's ever been.
Yeah, I think it's right what you're saying, though, because my mother, she was really, really supportive of me when I was growing up, and she used to take me to see an elderly lady who was absolutely, I mean, she must have been 80 when I was about 15, and she was absolutely phenomenal. And she recently actually passed, she passed away. I think she was about 96 when she passed away, but she was taking bookings, right? She had a 3-year waiting list. Yeah. And she, my mum used to go and call for a cup of tea, and she'd sit there with us, and she'd be so happy to see us. And she'd be like, oh, wait till you're older. And I was like, I'm only, I think I was about 20 the last time I saw her. But it's just, it is phenomenal when you do see people who have had the ability for all those years, and they've seen so much from the war all the way through. And I just find it so fascinating.
Oh, so do I.
But we're nearly out of time.
Oh, no, darling, how quickly does it go? How quickly does it go?
What's coming up for you? Like now, I know you're on tour at the moment. So if people are wanting to go and see you, how would they go about booking tickets?
The website, really, which is all the W's. sallymorgan.tv. They just go onto my website, and the tour dates are on there. Just click on that and they'll get all the dates, because I don't know where I'm going from one day to the next. I just get there's so much in my head at the moment. I'm doing so many different bits and pieces, which are all very exciting, and so I'm kept busy even when I'm not on tour. But at the moment, the big thing is touring the UK once again, seeing all my friends all over the UK, which is lovely.
That's fantastic. But yeah, the TV is another prominent feature coming up as well with you. And it's really strange, because obviously talking to you, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is so exciting. Oh. And I'm really honoured to have you on the show my first show anyway.
No, I feel the same. Very honoured that you've asked me to be on your show. And, things like it can be hugely successful. And let's just say many more years of paranormal investigation and radio show.
Yeah, and hopefully a bit more TV as well for us, for the girls. Yeah. That's what we're hoping for.
Yeah.
But I just want to say thank you so much, and thank you, Fern, as well for organising everything, and I'll be seeing you at the venue near me very soon.
Yeah. Listen, to all your listeners. Find out. Okay, I'm just going to say goodbye to all your listeners, to those listeners. Keep listening to her. She's amazing, and thank you very much for putting up with my voice for the last hour or whatever it was. Just let them cut that because she's.
So I just want to say thank you to Sally for joining me this evening on what was my Prism show, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm really sorry I didn't get to ask any of your questions in the chat room, but I'm sure I will put Sally and she'll come on in about 6 months' time. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you to Kerry and Paul and Richard. Over and out.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to join us for more shows throughout the week. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and the World Wide Web to keep up to date with all the shows right here on Parasearch Radio.